What's happening, everyone? This is Matt on the Vinyl Head UK channel, and I've got another vinyl appreciation video for all of you guys. So today we're going to dive into the initial British thrash scene. It's a scene that maybe not everyone is quite as familiar as say the American scene or even the European scene, especially with the German bands. But nonetheless, it's a scene that produced some great bands and produced some great albums. So one of those albums I've got next to me here, it's by a band who probably, in all honesty, I hadn't really listened to all that much. I'd heard of them. But yeah, I didn't really know too much about them or have checked them out all that much. But I picked this record up. I love my thrash, as I've mentioned before. You can't miss this album. It's so in your face. But here we go. Let me show you what we've got today. And it is Obnoxious by Acid Rain. I told you it's in your face. You wouldn't miss this one. It definitely stands out in my collection when you're going through them. So this is, it's the second full length by Acid Rain. It was released in 1990. Now, having looked on, when this arrived, I scanned it into Discogs, and it comes up with it being a original first pressing, which I'm quite surprised at. It's in really good nick. Obviously, normally with any other first pressings that I've got, they're, especially from back in the day, they're a little bit banged up, they're a little bit worn. This is like brand new condition. I'm a little skeptical about whether it is a first pressing or whether that's just a mistake. But it's the best condition first press from an album that's, you know, a fair amount of years old. As I say, this is 1990. So we're looking at 31 years old, and this has survived 31 years without a single bump or dent or crease or rip. I mean, who knows? It could be. I'd just be a bit surprised, but there we go. So yeah, second full length. We say second full length. They release Moschkenstein, I think is how you pronounce that one, which was an initial EP, but I would kind of more class that as an album. It was about 30 minutes long or so. But yeah, technically, this is the second full length by the band. Let's have a little look. There's not too much really to look at on the artwork itself. So obviously that very vibrant pink and then the blue on the back. It looks like one of those like those Haribo sweets that you get, that pink and blue like Haribo sweet or whatever it is. Acid Rain at the top, and then Obnoxious in what looks like very kind of it reminds me of like the font that you could get on like Windows 98, where you got like 4 different fonts on the paint thing, and it looks like one of those. It's simple, but it does a job. We also have Obnoxious written in like a lighter pink, if you can just about see that. The back is the same, just in blue. Acid Rain, the pink with the song titles, Obnoxious again, and then all of our production credits. It is very obnoxious, that pink and then the blue, especially you know, compared to some of the other thrash titles and artwork that's going on around that time. I often speak about artwork, and you know, with the thrash bands, there's some amazing pieces of artwork for albums out there. Maybe not so much this one, but you know, if they're going for obnoxious, what better than like vibrant pink, I guess. So let's have a look inside. I really like this inner sleeve, actually. It's just a paper inner sleeve, but it's kind of old school looking. It's got the Acid Rain logo again. It's got like a really just like funny picture of a band there. with Who's Who label next to each one. It just looks like some random candid photo from tour, but they just used and stuck it on the artwork there. And then our lyric sheet. It's a little bit of a bend there, but nothing too bad. Yeah, there's our lyric sheet on the back there, but I like this paper sleeve. I think it's quite cool. And then the record itself, black as per normal. There's side one. So under one flag is the record label it was put out on. So that kind of dominates the center of that record right there. Acid Rain and Obnoxious at the top, very small track listing. Side 2 is the same. And that is our record. So, let's talk a little bit. I said about the initial British thrash scene. It was kind of dominated by our own big four. Now, when we say big four of thrash, we think of Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax. But Britain did kind of have their own big four. We definitely didn't reach the heights of those American bands. You could probably argue and say there's definitely a big three of German thrash, maybe four. So you've got Creator, Sodom, and Destruction. You could probably, I know some would argue it, you could probably throw Tankard in there as well. But yeah, we have our initial big four of British thrash. So Acid Rain obviously was one of those. Xentrix, Sabbat and Onslaught. Well, probably who you would say were the big four of the British scene. Again, none of these bands really made it huge. I'd say Sabbath and Onslaught probably the two that are most known out of those four. But I mean, it's an interesting one. Britain doesn't really massively get looked at for thrash. Britain gets looked at for a lot of other things metal-wise, but not really thrash. As I say, you have the American bands that you have the Bay Area bands, you have the East Coast, you look at like bands like Anthrax, for example, Nuclear Assault, bands like that. And then obviously in Europe, as I say, we've talked about Destruction, Sodom, Creator, Tankard, you know, bands maybe not technically thrash, but like the Haunted, bands like that. You know, there's so many thrash bands out there, but Britain never really massively gets spoken about. Yes, there are a bit of a revival with thrash in more recent years. We look at bands like Evil, for example, Gamma Bomb over from Ireland. Bands like that kind of brought back a bit of a revival in Britain with thrash. But again, nothing that really got anywhere as big as the American or the European bands. You know, as I say, Britain heavily gets looked at as pioneers of heavy metal. We look at Black Sabbath, we look at Maiden, we look at Judas Priest. Also, Britain gets looked at for a more extreme scene. And also a doom scene. So Paradise Lost, Cathedral, bands like that. As I say, more extreme. So Napalm Death, Cradle of Filth, Bolt Thrower, Carcass. Bands like that, you know, that's what Britain is known for on the metal scene, not so much thrash. Which is a shame, really, because we have produced some solid bands and some solid records. And I think this one, I know it's kind of, you read reviews on it by critics and it's a bit up and down. Some really like it, some aren't quite as keen on it. But I really like this record. As I say, someone coming into this who's quite fresh and new to Acid Rain itself, a band that I've not massively listened to all that much. I quite like it. It very much has a influenced sound. So a couple of bands that I think quite heavily influenced this were Anthrax and Metallica. Specifically, And Justice for All era Metallica. So And Justice for All came out in 88. This was 1990. So a couple of years after. Probably, you know, this is just before Black Album. So we're still riding that And Justice for All wave. And I definitely think that plays a part in this record. Also the Anthrax feel. I think a lot of people may have maybe seen Acid Rain as somewhat a joke band. No, they weren't. I can tell you that. Like, listening to this is some serious musicianship at times on this record. But I mean, you know, for that initial EP that I spoke about, it had an Anthrax feel to it. There's gang vocals which feel like Anthrax. There's riffs that feel like Anthrax. We'll come on to that a little bit more. Let me tell you what the track listing is, as we always do, and share what we have on this. So, side 1, side A, we have Creative Restraint, Joke Chain, Thoughtful Sleep, and You Are Your Enemy. On the flip side, just the 3 tracks, Phantasm, My Open Mind, and Codes of Conformity. Now, as I say, the sound of it, Anthrax and Justice for All era Metallica are the 2 sort of main influences that I hear on this. Now, the track listing, there's a couple of tracks which kick up to the 9+ minute mark. So on side 2, Phantasm and Codes of Conformity are both over 9 minutes. Phantasm 9.5, near enough. There are intricate tracks. It's not just you know, full on balls to the wall thrash record. I looked at Municipal Waste, The Art of Partying, in another video. Yes, it's a bit more crossover thrash, but that is relentless riff the whole way through, whereas this has more to it. The structure of the songs, there's more to it. It kind of jumps about a little bit with the styles. There doesn't seem to be, well, there's a pattern, it's thrash, but there are different stylistic moments. It feels like a band kind of pulling together different things that they liked and shove it into one record. I know I mentioned Anthrax and Metallica, but there are other influences you can hear on it as well. The band did break up about a year after this, so I don't know if it was a band that was disputing, shall we say, on what they wanted, and it was kind of a mix and a mash of lots of different styles coming in, and maybe that fragmented the band. I don't know enough about it. The band, incidentally, let me tell you who is actually in the band. So on vocals, we can actually see him as well. Let me show you it as I talk about him. We have H on vocals, Howard Smith, who still actually is in the band. So Acid Rain reformed, I think it was about 2015 or so, they reformed. H here on vocals is the only sort of initial original member that is now with Acid Rain. It's a complete different new lineup by him. On guitars, we have Kev Papworth over here, and then Adam Lehan, hope I got that right. Adam went on to play for Cathedral after the breakup. We have Ian MacDonald, or Mac, as he's seen here, on bass. And then Mark Wharton, or Ramsey, as he's known here, on drums. Another one who went on to play for Cathedral. So I think when Acid Rain broke up, Lee Dorian came in and took a couple of the guys away to play with Cathedral. There was, I believe, a guitarist, not on this record, that played for Acid Rain, who is still going strong with Cathedral and has done many albums with the band. So that's our lineup with Acid Rain at that time. Now, coming on to the tracks themselves, as I say, we spoke a little bit about length and a bit of a mix on stuff. Kicking off the record is Creative Restraint. It's kind of a mid-tempo track, really. We have some gang vocals, which I talked about, kind of made me feel like Anthrax. Of course, we hear with Anthrax that great Scott Ian backing vocal, and then some gang vocals with Frank Bello as well. It's what I kind of feel with this one. There's a really nice instrumental passage on this one as well. It's, I say, one of the shorter tracks. So we're at 5 minutes 11 on this track. But there is definite And Justice for All, James Hetfield era vocal influence with H. if you listen to And Justice for All, or if you listen to Metallica on tour through sort of 88, 89, 90, Hetfield, I think that's when his voice was strongest. And I think that influence has come off onto H. And you can hear that Hetfield sort of growly vocal coming through. And now, yeah, sort of, not that he does the yeahs, but that sort of feel to it as well. Joke Chain is another mid-pace sort of opening. It goes into quite a technical passage. This isn't just, as I say, straightforward thrash. It's quite a technical thrash album at times. It's got a really nice thrashy riff coming at the back end of this track as well. Thoughtful Sleep is a track that I actually really like. It's probably maybe my favourite track. I think Phantasm is also a very strong track. Maybe my other favourite on this one. But it kind of has like a ballady intro to start with almost. It's not a ballad by any means, but a ballady intro. And then we hear Hetfield coming in a little bit more, that influence there. There's kind of a change of tempo, a very Maiden-esque change of tempo midway through the song that kind of just comes out of nowhere and goes on in a different direction in the song. And that to me had a Maiden influence on it. Of course, another great British band. Not that bouncy feel that Steve Harris and co had, but definitely like the way it just went, boom, there we go, we're off in a different direction. A change of tempos hit us and we're flying. And it did have that Maiden feel to it. There's a nice acoustic end to this track. So again, just a very different element coming in with the acoustic, which then leads into You Are Your Enemy, which is the shortest track by an absolute mile at 2 minutes 36. Which, yeah, it's way, way shorter than any of the other tracks on this record. But this is probably the closest you'll get to an out-and-out thrash track. If you take away the technical thrash side and whatnot, and sort of the Anthrax riff, this is an out-and-out fast thrash riff that you bang your head to and you get in that circle pit to. There's almost kind of a breakdown towards the end of this track as well, like a heavier breakdown passage, and then straight back into that fast riff. And yeah, this is probably, I'd say, the most sort of out-and-out thrash metal track on this record. Going on to the second side, on side 2, side B, Phantasm, as I say, it's got an orchestra at the start. There's some orchestral moments, which I don't know why they have that. It's very odd that just out of nowhere it has orchestral parts. They don't stay in for very long. There's some like orchestral stabs coming through. And then we go into kind of like a mid-tempo technical riff. Before we go back into like a thrashy. This track is full of riffs, very thrashy riffs. We go into a time signature change as well. Later on in this track, as I say, this track is just full of riffs. But then there is another riff which I think is the closest we get to an Anthrax riff in there as well. So there's a lot of different styles coming in this. But I find it odd with the orchestra. I'm not sure if it works. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It's just very random coming in. My Open Mind, another of the shorter tracks at 4 minutes 48. Again, more And Justice for All feels to it with the vocals and the sort of musicality and the production. I feel we've got bass, obviously, which And Justice really doesn't, but the kind of production values as well, mainly with the guitar tone, I hear a lot of And Justice for All on. And then we go into the last track, which is Codes of Conformity. It's another 9 minute plus one. It's quite technical again. But then it goes into a really odd funk passage at the end, which again is very left field. It's very odd, but having this sort of funk passage, and then we go into like chipmunks at the end, like this chipmunky vocal thing to close off a record. Really odd, and the funk passage was quite odd. So this is what I meant earlier. It's kind of pulling in different things and throwing them in randomly, like the orchestra and the funky bit and stuff, but it still makes for a really good record. Like if you like kind of more technical thrash rather than out and out thrash, I think this is a good record to check out, definitely. Sound wise, it sounds really good. As I say, I'm skeptical on it being a initial first pressing, an original press. Take my eye out there. An initial first press, because it is in such good nick. I've got a couple of first pressings in my collection. I have a Judas Priest one from back in the 70s or early 80s. And that's worn. That Deep Purple one from 1981 is very worn. But this is in great nick. So I don't know. I'm hesitant. I'm really hesitant on it being an initial pressing. But it could be. You never know. But yeah, sound-wise, it sounds good. It's not digital. It does not sound like a digital recording to me. It sounds analog. It's got a nice volume on it. It's got a nice bit of whack, which, you know, as I've always said, I think metal and hard rock, you need to have that turned up. But I like it. I was pleasantly surprised. I went into it a little bit in the unknown. I listened to a little bit online of their stuff and I was impressed. So I went and picked it up. I had a nice interaction on social media with the band. On my Instagram, I put up some photos of this on my story of the artwork, which I normally do with all my records. And I had a nice little interaction with the band, which is cool. You know, I like that. It's nice to know that they're human and they can talk to us and appreciate us for sharing their music or talking about their music. So, yeah. There we have it, Acid Rain, Obnoxious, one of the pioneers of the British metal or British thrash metal scene. I'm glad they're back together. They've put another album out since reforming. Go check that out as well. That will be on my my want list, definitely. But there we have it, Acid Rain, Obnoxious. Very obnoxious artwork right there. Thank you again for checking it out. Don't forget, go and subscribe. Go and smash that like button. Hit the bell for all notifications. As I say, the social media pages are there as well. Go and give a follow to Instagram and Twitter. Thrash metal is where it is at. Once again, don't forget, go and buy vinyl. Go and listen to vinyl. And I will be back real soon with more vinyl and plenty more content. Take care.